Over 25 killed in deadly Iran protests. Tens of thousands on the streets. Economic crisis ignites violence. What is unfolding in Iran today? And what was Iran like before 1979?
Take a moment to look at these images on your screens. The year is 1975. Girls in bright dresses race down university corridors. Cars pass by outside, many driven by women. Beauty salons are opened with women in flared trousers smoking discreetly behind walls. Women flit through campuses, offices and airports. Their conversations are bold and so is their fashion. Europe, you must be thinking, or the United States of America. Well, these images are actually from the 1970s Tehran in Iran. From a time for many Iranian women, freedom was in bloom. They were voting, studying, working and traveling abroad. Laws passed in the 1960s and 1970s raised the age of marriage, gave them rights in divorce and pushed for equal pay. By the late 1970s, there were over 1/3 of university students that were women. Many studied medicine or law. Girls were attending school in record numbers. The hijab was optional. There were women in the parliament and a few in the judiciary. So what changed? What was Iran like before the 1979 Islamic Revolution and why does it matter today? What were the social, political and economic influences that shaped modern Iran? Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Explained with me, Megha Sharma. And today we take you through Iran before 1979 and how that history echoes the ongoing protests sweeping the country right now. Before the Islamic Revolution of 1979 that changed the country so drastically, Iranian women were participating members of society and the culture at large. Iran was ruled by the Pahlavi dynasty led by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. His reign, especially from the 1950s to the 1970s, was marked by rapid modernization, secular reforms and centralization of power. For almost 40 years, Iran was ruled by the Shah, who led the country through a series of sweeping changes. The Shah pushed the country to adopt a Western-oriented secular modernization in the decades before the revolution. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi became the Shah in 1941, but his real consolidation of power came after 1953, when a CIA and MI6-backed coup overthrew Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, who had nationalized Iran's oil industry. Following the 1953 coup d'etat, carried out under the aegis of the United Kingdom and the United States. What followed was Shah's rule as a centralized authoritarian monarch. The Iranian government centralized power under Shah and brought foreign oil companies back into the country's industry through the Consortium Agreement of 1954. The Shah saw himself as a modernizer, as a king leading Iran into the future. His model was Western Europe and the United States in contrast to traditional Iranian or Islamic governance. This led to Iran becoming a key US ally in the Cold War, a bastion against Soviet influence in West Asia. Under the Shah's rule, Iran's economy and educational opportunities expanded. Britain and United States counted Iran as a major ally in the Middle East, and the Shah forcefully industrialized large segments of the country. Due to Iran's large supply of oil, proximity to India and a shared border with the Soviet Union, Britain and US fully backed the Iranian government. The Shah's leadership seemed determined to modernize Iran and follow the footsteps of modern Turkey. The Shah wanted an Iran that could compete with the West. This brings us to the White Revolution, a sweeping reform program designed to rapidly modernize Iran. Launched in the 1960s, the Shah launched the White Revolution that he felt would transform Iran into a global power and modernize the nation by nationalizing key industries and redistributing land. For the urban elite and middle class, this era brought opportunity, prosperity, and global exposure. The bulk of the program was aimed at Iran's peasantry while redistributing the aristocratic landlord class wealth down to the working class Iranians. Through land reform, the Shah hoped to ally himself with the peasantry in countryside and to sever their ties with the aristocracy in the city, weakening feudal lords. The Shah also aimed at expanding education and literacy, with women encouraged to get an education. Men and women mixed freely, and educational opportunities for women were greatly expanded. Moreover, the White Revolution brought about large-scale industrialization, including promotion of industrial growth and profit-sharing schemes for workers. Significantly, tenacious women's rights organizations like the Organization of Iranian Women, the Women's Party, the Women's Democratic Organization, and the Women's Progressive Movement finally succeeded in their suffrage efforts when the Shah granted them the right to vote and be elected into parliament on February 26, 1963. In the parliamentary elections held later that year, 6 women were elected, while 2 others were appointed to the Senate by the Shah himself. But in a chilling prelude of what was to come, opposition leader Ayatollah Khomeini, the future leader of Iran, then rising to prominence, led protests against women's suffrage and compared voting rights for women to prostitution. The right and status of women, however, continued to be one of the starkest contrasts with post-revolution Iran. Hijab was not mandatory. Women worked as doctors, judges, journalists, and pilots. Universities had large female enrollment. Family laws were more progressive than in many neighboring countries. But this progress was uneven, largely concentrated in cities. Rural and conservative families often felt alienated by these rapid social changes. The cost of rapid and wide-ranging changes, however, was alienation. In his efforts to modernize, the Shah overreached. There was too much happening way too fast. The Shah outlawed the hijab from being worn in public. Him and his wife adopted Western dress, and he insisted that all government employees do the same. Younger Iranians didn't mind, but the older members of the society had a harder time assimilating. This provided space for leaders calling for a return to traditional values. Furthermore, while the Shah modernized the economy and society, political freedom shrank dramatically. Political parties were banned or merged into a single loyalist party. The parliament existed, but real power rested entirely with the Shah. The secret police, Sawak, became a symbol of repression. They did not only monitor academics, journalists, clerics, and students, but also used arrests, torture, intimidation, and surveillance. The Sawak crushed leftist groups, Islamists, and secular opposition alike, cementing authoritarian rule. This created a climate of fear, even as the country outwardly appeared modern and prosperous. Moving further on, the 1970s oil boom transformed Iran into a cash-rich state. Oil revenues surged and massive state spending followed. Iran imported Western weapons, technology, and consumer goods. However, wealth distribution was deeply skewed. A small elite lived in extreme luxury, while rural areas remained poor and underdeveloped. Inflation rose sharply, and traditional merchants and clerics felt economically sidelined. Many Iranians felt that progress was imposed, not inclusive. In his bid to push for secularism, the Shah deliberately tried to reduce the influence of the Shia clergy. Religious schools were sidelined and clerics lost legal authority. Secular courts and institutions replaced religious ones. But this only meant that instead of disappearing, the clergy became a voice of moral and social opposition. They began building networks through mosques and charities, speaking the language of the justice, inequality, and cultural identity. Among them was Ayatollah Khomeini, who fiercely criticized the Shah's authoritarianism, Western alignment, and social reforms, particularly land reform and women's emancipation. By the late 1970s, public frustration boiled over. Mass protests involving students, workers, clerics, intellectuals, and even secular nationalists swelled across cities. Many Iranians did not necessarily oppose modernization, but they resented being excluded from power, ignored politically, and silenced socially. When the protests began, the Shah lacked political legitimacy while opposition groups united temporarily. Security forces were overstretched, and in early 1979, the Shah fled Iran. What happened next? Ayatollah Khomeini, a religious leader in exile, returned to lead a coalition of forces that overthrew the monarchy and established the Islamic Republic. This marked a foundational change. Politics became deeply intertwined with religious authority. A theocratic constitution replaced the monarchy. The supreme leader became the ultimate authority over all branches of government, and social and cultural policies were dramatically reshaped by conservative interpretations of Islam. What unfolded in Iran in 1979 was not just a revolution, it was a collapse of a system that had modernized without democratizing. The monarchy had no democratic institutions to absorb dissent. But how different was the system that followed? For women, the black chadar replaced colorful scarves. The hijab became mandatory. Mixed gender schools were shut. Music was banned from state radio. Laws were rewritten. A woman's testimony in court became worth half that of a man. Judgments were closed to women. So were certain university courses. Overnight, the state turned the private lives of women into matters of public control. It was one authoritarian system taking over another. And if you're wondering why this matters today, it's because the same fault lines persist. Today, Iran is seeing some of its most widespread protest movements in years. Protests have spread across dozens of cities, from bazaars to university camps. Demonstrators are not just focusing on bread and butter issues. Slogans are increasingly political, targeting the supreme leader and the entire governing system. Security forces have responded with force, including lethal crackdowns in some areas such as Male Shahi County. At least 29 are believed to have died so far. Some protest chants echo anti-regime sentiment and in some cases even revive older themes of broader systemic change. History matters and parallels emerge. In 1979, Iranians protested over inequality, political exclusion and cultural imposition overseen by an authoritarian power. In 2026, Iranians protest over economic hardship, the lack of voice and state control over private life overseen by an authoritarian power. The difference is this: in 1979, the enemy was the king. Today, the struggle is with a system born from the very revolution. In essence, while history does not repeat, it does resonate. The same structural pressures and unmet aspirations echo in different political landscape. The question that now arises is, will the ongoing protests evolve into a broader political challenge? And will the legacy of the 1979 revolution continue to shape Iran's next chapter?
Over 25 killed in deadly Iran protests. Tens of thousands on the streets. Economic crisis ignites violence. What is unfolding in Iran today? And what was Iran like before 1979?